It's really hard to imagine how so many things could have gone so wrong during the winter storms.
Yeah, I didn't think that would happen.
My mom definitely was a hero in this.
We implemented more reforms in a shorter amount of time than any other grid in the U.S.
This isn't safe. I mean, this isn't a livable conditions.
Thanks for being with us tonight. 1 year ago today, a deadly winter storm blew through Texas, bringing snow, ice, and, of course, freezing temperatures.
More than 200 people died and millions lost power. Outages began Sunday, February 14th, with about 110,000 homes and businesses losing electricity. Now, at the peak of the power outage on Monday, February 15th, more than 4.5 million Texas homes and businesses were without power. That's more than 30% of customers. Rolling outages continued throughout the week. 4 days later, nearly 500,000 homes and businesses were still without power.
Texans demanded answers about why they were left without power for so long. Investigative reporter Erica Proffer takes us deep into what has changed to fix the power grid and what still needs to be done.
When looking at the February winter storm, the most important thing to know is people died. We can't let that happen again. State records show the February 2021 storm killed 246 people. Blackouts lasted nearly a week. At one point, the power grid was 4 minutes, 37 seconds away from total collapse. Coming out of the storm, power companies had bills they couldn't pay, which means higher bills for everyone. Reports show the storm cost Texans $130 billion. Every single power supply we use failed. First, gas wellheads froze. Then clouds and snow crippled solar. Wind turbines froze. And when the power plants went down, the natural gas side took a bigger hit. The Railroad Commission regulates the oil and gas industries. Jim Wright is one of 3 commissioners.
When the electricity was cut off in a lot of those areas, we didn't have the ability to keep that pressure in the system.
Power plants need natural gas to generate electricity. Natural gas goes to the power plant using electric compressors to keep the pressure flowing. Energy demand shot up during the storm. By the time the temperature hit single digits, the power grid manager already called for blackouts. So when those blackouts hit a compressor, the gas pressure headed to power plants dropped. More power loss. And there's not one solution. Lawmakers mandated weatherization, but some of the natural gas generators, producers, and distributors will get to skip weatherizing. The requirements for natural gas weatherization are not in place right now. Once figured out, those required are only the areas deemed critical to that gas to compressor to power plant process. The state doesn't know who that is. 3 state agencies and the grid manager started mapping it last summer. It's due in September.
I'm hoping to see that map a lot sooner than September.
Wright says most of our natural gas companies did winterize this year. Commission inspectors looked at most storage sites, some processing plants, and pipelines.
The Texas grid is in the best shape it's ever been.
Peter Lake is the chairman of the Public Utility Commission. PUC regulates everything on the power side.
We implemented more reforms in a shorter amount of time than any other grid in the U.S.
PUC set weatherization rules. But he's not only talking about weatherizing. While natural gas has no price cap, power can only go for so much. The PUC cut the max rate by almost half and created customer protection rules. PUC is redesigning the way our power grid operates, such as the process before cutting people's power, and making sure power companies have enough fuel on standby for each customer.
We want to stay as far away from crisis as possible.
Bottom line, the state has made changes to how certain companies prepare for winter, and the power regulators and emergency teams are now all talking to each other. But we still have more to go. In Austin with the KVUE Defenders, I'm Erica Proffer.
The storm caused severe damage to homes and businesses. Some Rosemont at Oak Valley tenants in Southeast Austin are just now moving back into their homes a year later. But there are some residents at the affordable housing complex who didn't have the option to temporarily move. Those tenants are still living with damage that includes missing interior walls and large holes in their ceilings. The KVUE defenders took a closer look at what's being done to help the tenants. Here's investigative reporter Jenny Lee.
Here's the first issue that we have.
A hole in his bathroom ceiling doesn't rattle Derek Rubio.
This is the trippy one.
But this
You can imagine, you're doing your thing.
is what nightmares are made of.
What worries me is there's some critters coming out.
With half the wall gone, he fears it's an entrance for rodents or other critters escaping the cold.
In my mind, I'm thinking that. So, I'm like, you better hurry up.
That hole is like others we see throughout the apartment. All of them are covered with plastic and duct tape after apartment maintenance cut out partial walls and ceilings that were once water and mold damaged. Rubio says some were caused by the winter storm, some were there before.
Yeah.
In another bathroom, Rubio tells me how not having a wall has made for some uncomfortable moments.
Can you hear?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We actually have a conversation sometimes too. Oh my
God. Give me some more toilet paper.
Yeah. No, seriously.
But the missing walls near his front door are no laughing matter.
You can see through them.
Rubio says you can see and hear his neighbors through where the wall once stood. Not to mention how cold it gets inside his apartment when the temperature drops outside. That's why he bought this magnetic curtain to try to keep the cold air out.
It's ridiculous. This isn't a livable condition.
But these conditions are how Rubio, a cancer survivor, his mother, and his 12-year-old son have been living with for months.
Very unsafe.
It's not just Rubio. In a neighbor's apartment, several possums were caught after coming through the plastic. Pictures of another apartment at Rosemont show missing walls and holes in ceilings.
What is happening to these tenants is horrific.
Gabby Garcia is the project coordinator for Building and Strengthening Tenant Action, or BASTA, an advocacy group for renters. The nonprofit group has been trying to help residents at Rosemont and Oak Valley with their housing issues for months.
These tenants have been through so much, and so much of this could be fixed with just transparency, accountability, and they've done none of that.
Garcia says some tenants are too scared to talk about their issues on camera for fear of retribution from apartment management, but not Keisha Prince.
Who lives without walls for that long?
We first met Prince a year ago when water from the winter storm soaked her ceiling, walls, and floors.
It was buckling and the walls were buckling.
Repairs were made after KVUE got involved. But months later in July, Prince and 86 other families received vacate letters. Rosemont management cited necessary repairs caused by the winter storm as the reason. Renters had until the end of the month to move out.
So that doesn't give me enough time, even if I want to move somewhere else. Because I tried to look for an apartment, but there's nothing available.
Neighbors took their concerns to Travis County commissioners who voted to halt the evictions and support the tenants. 41 of the 87 families ended up moving out. Even after commissioners intervened, frustrations continue for tenants. Residents say communication problems and repair issues persisted. In December, neighbors and tenant group BASTA held a press conference after Rosemont's owners, the Strategic Housing Finance Corporation, released a statement citing all repairs were complete and residents were moving back in. BASTA and residents couldn't believe it.
Today we're here to shine light on the fact that SHFC is trying to just sweep all of this under the rug and is continuing with saying trust us, trust us, trust us, yet reality says something different.
BASTA says it hired a mold remediation company and tested 2 apartments that had undergone repairs. The group says both tests discovered mold.
We've never committed ourselves to addressing the issues specifically related to mold.
That's Patrick Howard, the vice president of the Strategic Housing Finance Corporation, the company that owns Rosemont and 13 other affordable housing units in Travis County. While SHFC is a nonprofit, it's not a traditional one. It doesn't pay taxes, but it does own some for-profit affordable housing complexes, not Rosemont. Howard also says he has been trying to educate Rosemont residents that insurance money the company has received only allows for repairs related to the winter storm, not issues that were present before, like some of the mold.
So we're not suggesting that there is no mold anywhere, because obviously there is mold, and we'll address that. But we're addressing the issues related to moisture related to the storm, which means you can move back into your unit because it is safe.
Howard says they are working with the few tenants who do have immediate mold issues. As for residents like Rubio, living with partial interior walls and ceilings, Howard says they are working on those apartments as fast as they can. But until then, Prince says she won't stop fighting for her neighbors.
They go home to safe, mold-free apartments every night. And all we get is more promises and more promises and more promises.
Which is how she got herself appointed to one of the 2 new tenant positions on the Strategic Housing Finance Corporation Board of Directors in January.
I want to thank y'all for looking into putting tenants on the board. I think that is something that's going to be epic.
An effort Travis County leaders recognize and say they hope will make a difference.
I don't ever again want there to be such a disconnect between the board and the court. And I hope that you will take the opportunity to help educate us as to what you see and what you believe needs to happen there.
These 2 rooms were fully wet.
In January, we accompanied Prince on a walkthrough of her recently repaired apartment. As of February 7th, she has yet to move back into Rosemont. The mother of 1 says she has no intention of it either until she's satisfied the unit is safe.
How much more patience do we need?
For the KVUE Defenders, I'm Jenny Lee.
Prince and the second Rosemont tenant appointed to the Strategic Housing Finance Board are expected to start at next month's meeting. Prince says their appointments will go a long way in protecting tenants' rights. You can find out more about SHFC on our website, KVUE.com.
During the freeze last year, many Central Texas communities experienced water issues. Many pipes froze or burst, causing people to lose water for days on end. This is video from an apartment complex at the Domain during the storm last year. And for those who did have water, they were advised to boil it. Now, the entire city of Austin was under a boil water notice due to temporary power loss at the Ulrich water treatment plant and water pressure dropping below minimum standards. The boil water notice lasted for 6 days last year, making a dire situation even more difficult for many people. Austin had another boil water notice, of course, last week, but it wasn't related to winter weather this time. Instead, it was caused by a staff overlooking certain parts of the water treatment process.
Ahead, long lines and empty shelves.
And it's emotional because you read it and all you can sense is like the desperation.
A family steps up in a big way to help people struggling to find food and water.
You're watching After the Freeze, a KVUE Defenders special report.
KVUE weather is sponsored by Capital Farm Credit. Together, we're better.
Welcome back to After the Freeze, a KVUE Defenders special report. The 2021 winter storm led to food shortages across the state. Delivery trucks and shipments were forced off of the icy roads.
Here's a look at long lines outside Central Texas grocery stores last year. On the inside shelves, many of them completely empty during the winter weather. Now, this February freeze stranded some Austinites without food and water, and the Dove Springs neighborhood was especially hit hard.
One local family couldn't stand to see their community in pain. As Jake Garcia shows us, their answer to the frozen weather was a hot meal delivered with love.
That saying of like, food is the way to a person's heart. People come to her home, they always eat. Anytime she has an opportunity to feed others, she does.
For Enriqueta Maldonado, cooking is a love language. Because a home-cooked meal from this heart and these hands is special. On this day, I got to experience that feeling for myself. Knowing full well that 1 year ago, it would have meant even more.
My mom definitely was a hero in this.
This is Enriqueta's daughter, Monica.
Being that she worked in the cafeteria for the school district, she has always cooked in, large quantities. When the winter storm happened, it was so natural for her.
The February freeze hit the Maldonado's neighborhood hard.
We're in Dove Springs. We know it's an underserved community, and we can't wait for someone to get resources to us.
So Monica and Mom sprung into action.
Era carne molida y papa, puré de papa, frijoles, fideo, y lo hicimos tacos también.
It may have ended up being like about 80 to 100 pounds of ground beef.
Cooking some meals, my mom, she's old, but she's still grinding.
Enriqueta told me she'd wake up at 5 a.m. each morning and would spend all day cooking. Eventually cooking so much that she ran out of supplies.
So I contacted the church and I said, hey, I have some people who have vehicles. Are you willing to give us your food?
For us, it was a fantastic opportunity to be able to bless our community.
Eddie Jackson is a pastor at Terry Road Baptist Church.
So, of course, we opened our doors.
And we pulled up, and they literally emptied their pantry into our vehicles.
So now armed with the tireless cook and truckloads of food, the next goal was to reach as many people as possible.
They were on the grounds, going to apartments and feeding people.
Enter Desbra Mia with Do Good ATX.
And I was on my laptop dispatching people. Okay, this person filled out a form saying that they need help. This is where they live, this is what they need.
Loading up water, Pampers, just showing you guys what we're doing with the funds from Do Good ATX.
All told, the group prepared hundreds of meals and helped thousands of people. 1 year later, they're reflecting on their work.
¿Por qué era tan importante para ayudar a esas familias que no tuvieron nada durante ese momento?
Como te digo, porque también a nosotros nos pudo haber pasado eso, ¿verdad? Y también nosotros quisiéramos que otra gente nos ayudara a nosotros, ¿verdad?
I've been stuck at work for 5 days. The water helped us so much. And it's emotional because you read it and all you can sense is the desperation.
Desperation that was met with compassion and community.
Growing up in a Hispanic family, you're taught that these people around you are all you have, and these people around you are who you need to take care of.
For sure, the hot meals was the thing that really, I feel, touched people.
A time that'll forever be remembered because of the bitter colds.
Them feeling something warm in their hands.
But a time in which a hot, home-cooked meal meant everything.
That love was really put into making the meal.
That's what Dove Springs is to me.
And forever, I'll remember the faces of the people we served.
In Austin, I'm Jake Garcia.
That really does choke me up because that's what a community is supposed to do. Come together and help each other.
Very special people, no doubt about it.
Still to come, braving the snow and ice.
It was dead silent, so it was a little bit eerie.
While many Texans couldn't get to work, an Austin nurse didn't want to let her patients down. Her 2-mile trek in the storm when After the Freeze returns. Welcome back. It's been a year now since the deadly February winter storm began here in the state of Texas. You're watching After the Freeze, a KVUE special report tonight. One of the biggest challenges last year saw during the winter freeze, road conditions. Despite efforts to be more prepared after the storm passed, Austin's TxDOT district still does not have a snowplow.
Officials say they talked about buying one, but didn't because they're, quote, seldom used. Now, the snow and ice made it so difficult to get to and from places. One Austin nurse made the trek ankle deep in snow just so she could get to work.
Here's KVUE's Darrenisha Heron, who spoke with her about why she made that decision.
Nursing can be unpredictable.
I started in 2020, in May of 2020.
The year when the word unprecedented became the norm.
It was pretty chaotic. Everyone does what they have to do just to keep everything running.
One foot in front of the other. Brooke Wilson is walking in her passion, delivering babies at St. David's Women's Center of Texas. On the morning of February 15th, 2021, she realized just how far her passion would take her.
Here's a look at how much snow it officially brought at Camp Mabry, 6.4 inches of snow. That means we saw the most snow that we have seen since 1949. That's 72 years.
The snow doesn't stop babies from being born. They just keep coming.
With roads covered with ice and snow.
I just kind of put on my shoes, and I had an old jacket that had duct tape on it.
Wilson made the 2-mile trek to work on what's typically a busy Palmer Lane.
It was dead silent, so it was a little bit eerie. It's like my shoes got soaking wet, and then the snow was up past my ankles, so it ended up just, my pants were pretty much wet from the knee down. I was like, I just gotta keep going.
An hour later, relief.
Then I made it in maybe an hour before my shift started, and all of my coworkers were sitting there from night shift, and they were asking how I got there, and I just mentioned that I walked, and they all lost it because they didn't understand why I would walk in the snow.
Of course, to care for her patients.
I had some patients that I still keep in touch with that were, delivering their babies and trying to figure out how to make plans to get home afterwards.
But even more so for her coworkers.
Just because some of them had already been here for a couple of days, and we've been working in a pandemic. We're all tired.
Tired, but resilient.
I mean, my walk was difficult, but I wasn't 9 months pregnant about to have a baby. So I can imagine that it was a little bit more stressful for most of the people that I was caring for. Overall, everyone was just grateful that we showed up, though.
And she continues to show up a year later, one foot in front of the other, prepared for the unexpected. In Austin, I'm Darrenisha Heron.
Now that is true dedication.
You forget that it was during the pandemic that all that was taking place, really before many people were vaccinated last year at this time. Amazing stories all around.
Well, our After the Freeze KVUE special will be right back after the break.
The 2021 winter storm left many Texans frustrated, in need of help, and in some cases, grieving.
But the strength of Central Texans shined during those dark moments, people helping people in times of need. And 1 year later, we're still recovering, and we're holding officials accountable to make sure it doesn't happen again.
All month long, the KVUE defenders have looked into what still needs to change to prevent another winter storm crisis like we saw last year. That includes interviews with Austin Energy and Austin Water.
Text the word freeze to the number right there on your screen, and we'll send you links to those stories. And thank you so much for watching After the Freeze.
Join us tonight. We'll have a regular newscast back on the Night Beat beginning at 10 p.m.